the least fun game of siblings or dating I have ever played. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Now, one of my favourite things to watch on YouTube is the good old-fashioned tier list video. People ranking things, especially like people ranking pop culture moments or like films or albums and stuff from the past year. Like those kind of yearly roundup videos. Every single time I just eat them up. So I figured it might be fun to make a tier list video myself, and I have no idea how to do it. I have no idea how I'm gonna edit the footage together. This video might never see the light of day, but it'll be fun. I'm gonna have some fun. So in this video I'm gonna be going through all of the books that I read last year that were released last year, all of the 2024 new releases that I read in 2024. I was thinking about doing like a full tier list ranking of every single book that I read in the last year, but that would be like 141 books, and that would take me hours probably, and I would have to change the rankings all the time because I'm indecisive. So I just kind of decided to condense it down into just the books that were released last year, and tell you about which ones you should be adding to your 2025 reading list and which ones you should maybe avoid. As with all of these kinds of things, this is just my opinion. Just because I don't like a book doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I mean, I feel like with some of these books, they aren't very good. But again, it is my opinion, and if a book isn't for me, then it might be for other people. So take all of this with a grain of salt. Grain of salt? Pinch of salt? I don't know. A grain of salt would be a very, very small amount of salt. I don't know. Words. So without further ado, let's get to the tier list. I'm going to go through all of the tiers first. They're all named after like significant memes and TikTok sounds and stuff from the past year. Also, there are some kind of older ones, but are still very much relevant, and I use them all the time. So, I'm still going to include them. So, starting with the bottom tier, this tier is called Oh, That's Not. This is obviously named after that iconic moment where, was it Kelly Osbourne said something that she probably shouldn't have done on a TV show.
If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's not.
In the sense that
Just like maybe she ought to have considered thinking before she spoke. Maybe the authors of these books should have considered keeping these books in the drafts. These are books that I did not enjoy at all, and I definitely would not recommend them unless you're like a very specific kind of person who would actually enjoy the content and the tropes and stuff in the books. In which case, like, you do you. I'm not gonna yuck anyone's yum. They just definitely were not for me at all. One tier above that, we have Mama Mid. This is named after the TikTok sound that's like, it's called the Midwest because everything in it is mid. These are, as you could probably guess from the name of the tier, books that I thought were mid. They were painfully average. There were bits in there that I kind of vaguely enjoyed or appreciated, but more so they were either completely forgettable or I had a lot of complaints about them as well. Next up, we have Hear Me Out Cake. These are the books that I would have on my Hear Me Out Cake.
What? The number 8. It knows what it's doing.
What does that mean?
They're the kind of books that, like, I would follow up with the statement that I like the book with, hear me out, because do they have the best writing? No, they do not. Are they kind of objectively good books? Probably not. Although, who am I to judge on whether something is objectively good or objectively bad? These are the kind of books that, like, I did enjoy, but I would probably maybe be judged for saying that I enjoy them. You know, they're not like gonna win any literary prizes at all. And I do still have complaints about them, and I probably cringed a few times while reading them. But they're still fun, and I still had fun reading them. Next up, we have You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. This is, of course, named after that iconic sound from Dance Moms.
On the bottom, Paige, you were good. I'm waiting for you to be great.
And again, it kind of does what it says on the tin. These books were good, but they aren't great. They're not the kind of books that like stuck in my mind for a particularly long time. Although I do remember enjoying them at the time. I don't really recall much about why I enjoyed them, really. Yeah, they're kind of what I would call a nice read. I don't really have like a lot of massive complaints about them, but at the same time, I wouldn't kind of go running to reread them at any time in the future. Next up, we have Who Is This Diva? I don't actually know where this phrase came from, but it's a very kind of popular thing that people comment on TikTok, and of course it's in that kind of Donatella Versace format with the purple heart. And these are books that I definitely enjoyed, but kind of getting to like the top tiers now. We're starting to get to books that I would absolutely recommend. You know, I definitely enjoyed these books. They might not live rent-free in my brain, but they're still really good and definitely worth reading. And now we have our final two tiers. The penultimate tier, the tier second from the top, is Holding Space. Because aren't we all holding space for something these days?
This week, people are taking the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space with that.
I, for one, am holding space for the books in this tier. These are books that I loved. They're kind of real highlights of the year. A lot of them were on my list of like the 24 best books of 2024 that were in my previous video. These are the kind of books that I would kind of begin a review by saying, I love this. I really, really enjoyed this. I would definitely recommend it.
I didn't know that that was happening.
They're really kind of the 4.5 star to 4.75 star-ish books. And then finally, the top tier, the best of the best, is called Show Me to Me Please, named after that absolutely iconic video.
Show me to me, please. Send it to me, Rachel.
I honestly love these books as much as that woman loves Jesus. If I hear that the author is writing another book, show me to me, please. Send it to me, Rachel. If the author were to do an event nearby and I could go and meet them and tell them how much I love their book, show me to me, please. These are genuinely some of the best books I read this year. Some of them are new favorites of all time. I would shout about the books from the rooftops. I love them so much. The books in this tier are the books that you should definitely, absolutely add to your 2025 reading list. So we have our full tier list here. It is empty. And if you scroll a little bit down, we have our full kind of selection of books that we are going to rank. There are exactly 50 books there. I don't know how I managed to get such a nice round number. I also don't know how I managed to read 50 new releases in the past year. Safe to say I will be cutting down on the amount of new releases I am going to read in the next year. We are no longer in 2024 the plot. We are in 2020 thrive, and part of thriving is not going into debt. But that's enough of me yapping. We're going to go on to actually ranking the stuff now. We're going to start off with Midnight Ruin by Katie Robert. This is part of the Dark Olympus series. I believe it's book 6. And it's kind of a retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice, but also Charon is there. There's like a throuple situation. There are a lot of spicy scenes, and some of the spicy scenes are wild. Some of the wildest spice I have ever read. Very unrealistic and kind of crazy and indulgent. Indulgent for people who enjoy spice, which isn't really me. But I'm going to put it on my hear me out cake, because although I do have complaints about it, mostly about like the romance and the spice and stuff, I enjoyed other aspects of it. I liked the direction the plot is going, with like deep into the series at this point, and there is an overarching plot and it's progressing, and big secrets are revealed in this story. So I enjoyed that. And the romance itself, like besides the spice, in terms of like actual romance, it was kind of sweet. Yeah, there were bits I enjoyed. It was entertaining, at the very least. But yeah, it's going on the hear me out cake. Next up, we have Breakdown by Kathy Sweeney, and I am going to put this on Who Is This Diva? This is a fun book about a woman who is just like so sick of her life. She has a very kind of unsatisfying life, that's very much just like she lives for her family, her husband, her kids, and they're not particularly grateful towards her. So one day she just like leaves the house and continues walking and doesn't return. There's a lot of like female rage involved and stuff. It's quite cathartic, really. But yeah, it's a fun read. It's not very long. I think I actually read it on the plane home from when I went to Ireland. I got it in Ireland. It's a Irish book, and I read it on the plane, most of it at least. And yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. This is gonna go up here. I am holding space for this book. It's a historical fiction set during the Peloponnesian War. I have kind of a slightly longer review about it in my previous video, talking about the 24 best books that I read in the last year. It is one of those 24 books, obviously. So as you can probably tell, I did really, really enjoy it. Piglet by Lottie Hazel. I am going to put you in You Are Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. Because it was good. I remember enjoying it. However, I don't know whether it's because I just like read it earlier this year, within the first few months, and I just can't really remember it that well. It didn't really leave a massive lasting impression on me. Yeah, it's kind of literary fiction. There's kind of a lot of talk about food. And yeah, I did enjoy it back when I read it. But yeah, didn't leave a massive lasting impression. It was good. I wouldn't say it was great. Then we have Green Dot by Madeline Gray. I'm going to put you in Who Is This Diva? Yeah, this was a good book. I really enjoyed it. It's got a kind of messy, disastrous protagonist in her early 20s, not really knowing what she's going to do with her life, entering into a bit of a situationship. It's very kind of Conversations with Friends vibes. So if you enjoy that book, you'll probably enjoy Green Dot. And I really, really enjoyed Conversations with Friends, so I enjoyed Green Dot. The Murder After the Night Before is also going in Who Is This Diva? This book had no business being as good as it was. I read Katie Brent's previous book, which is called How to Kill Men and Get Away with It, last year, and I enjoyed it. It would probably go in the You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great category. It was very kind of formulaic for its genre, which is girl bosses committing manslaughter. There are a few other books in that category in this video, which I will talk about later. But this book is about a woman who like goes viral on Twitter for all the wrong reasons, and then the day after, her roommate is found dead. Basically, her life is kind of falling apart. It's not a very fun time for her. It's just one bad thing after the next, really. And she has to kind of go and find out who killed her best friend. There are a lot of twists, some I didn't see coming at all. The scope of the story is a lot bigger than I expected. There is kind of this massive conspiracy that is uncovered. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than How to Kill Men and Get Away with It. Yeah, it was really good. Next we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is another one for the Hear Me Out cake. It's another situation where I enjoyed the plot of the book a lot more than the romance and the spice. I mean, this book was massively memed on when it first came out for its spicy scenes. There are a lot of people kind of discovering the ins and outs of the Omegaverse and that kind of logic for the first time when reading this book, which was quite funny to witness. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this book. I enjoyed the plot. I enjoyed a lot of the kind of the twists in the plot. It had a lot more kind of political intrigue and stuff than I was expecting. But yeah, the actual spicy scenes I didn't particularly enjoy. I was cringing a lot. But yeah, I didn't really expect to enjoy this book as much as I did because I'm not really a paranormal romance kind of person. I'm definitely not like a vampire and werewolf romance kind of person. That's really not my thing. So I was expecting to not enjoy this book, but I did. And I will be reading the sequel when it comes out. Next, we have our first entry into the bottom tier. This is 14 Days. Yeah, the concept was so promising. It's kind of this collaborative novel written by loads and loads of really great authors, and it's kind of a short story collection with like an overarching plot about people in the middle of the COVID pandemic gathering on the roof of their apartment building and telling stories. You know, I should have really enjoyed this book. However, most of the short stories were pretty mid. There were a couple of standouts, but yeah, most of them were quite mid. Some of them were really not great. And I hated the ending. The ending has like this twist that is meant to be surprising and shocking and turn the story on its head, but I just thought it was completely unnecessary. It was kind of along the same lines as like a story starting with the main character having a dream and then the first chapter ending with and then I woke up. Like, it's that kind of like primary school creative writing kind of stuff that just did not sit right with me. Yeah, it just actually kind of pissed me off a little bit. Yeah, I did not enjoy it at all. Okay, next up we have Mongrel by Hanako Footman. This is also going to go in You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. Because it was good. I did enjoy it. But I enjoyed the second half more than the first half. The first half I found dragged a lot. I found it very difficult to get into. But once all kind of the little individual threads of the storyline wound themselves together, it was good. It's a story about three women who are of Japanese descent. One of them has lived in Japan all her life. One of them is a first generation immigrant to the UK. One of them is a second generation immigrant to the UK. And how their stories kind of interweave with each other. Yeah, I thought it was definitely worth reading and I'm glad I stuck with it, but it did take a lot of effort to stick with it. Okay, next we have Greta and Valdin, and this is yet another book that's going on. You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. Because I with the way everyone was kind of raving about this book and saying, you know, it's the best book of the year and all that, I was expecting something life-changing, which is probably on me for expecting too much of it. But I don't know, I was reading it and I was kind of expecting more from it. Like, it was good, it was still fun. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I think there was something missing. It was like the whole thing was like a running inside joke that I wasn't in on, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, but yeah, it felt like I was missing something when I was reading it, which again is probably on me. It's probably a me issue. Next up, we have It Lasts Forever and Then It's Over by Anda Markin. This is going in Who Is This Diva? I really enjoyed this book. It's, at its core, a zombie story. The main character is a zombie, but she's also a zombie capable of rational thought. It is just very eerie and atmospheric. It's very kind of post-apocalyptic vibes. But yeah, it's a very kind of unique take on that trope because it's a zombie apocalypse told from the point of view of a zombie. I just thought it was one of those books that's like, the concept was really good and the execution was also really good. We have another entry into Who Is This Diva? This is Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Frida Abike Amide, who wrote Ace of Spades. And I think I actually enjoyed this book more than Ace of Spades. This is another dark academia thriller for young adults about a girl who is the new student at a kind of prestigious boarding school, and on her first night her roommate goes missing and it's up to her to discover where she's gone. Yeah, it's this whole mystery that leads to a whole kind of massive conspiracy in the entire school. And yeah, it's another kind of very classic dark academia. This one is focused on exposing sexism in education as an institution. There were lots of twists, quite a few twists I didn't see coming. Yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed it. And it's a chunky book. It's like over 500 pages, but I read it in a matter of a couple of days. It like it had me glued to the page. It was very easy to read because you just wanted to find out what was going to happen. And yeah, you just wanted to keep reading. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Next up, we have Medea. This is gonna go in You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. It's a myth retelling, so I theoretically should have loved it. However, I have a feeling I've kind of been spoiled in terms of myth retellings because I have read so many and a lot of really, really good ones. I've kind of set my expectations really high now. So yeah, this is probably a me problem, but yeah, it didn't really kind of stick in my head a lot, this one. I feel like it didn't do a massive amount kind of new with the story of Medea, but it was still good. I still enjoyed it, and I feel like it did Medea justice. Next we have How to Kill a Guy in 10 Ways. This is another entry for You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. It's another one of those stories that is about girl bosses committing manslaughter. You know, it's one of those stories that is about a unlikely vigilante who kind of stumbles her way into getting revenge on trash men by killing them. It did feel pretty formulaic. I feel like it didn't really do anything particularly new with the subgenre. But yeah, again, maybe that's a me problem. Maybe I've just read too many of those kinds of books. And they're all kind of pretty similar. They all follow the same kind of formula and plot structure and stuff. But it was still good. I have very few complaints about it. Next we have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, and I am holding space for it. Yeah, this is one of my favorite romances, rom-coms that I read this year, although I don't know if I'd even call it a rom-com, because I was kind of going into it expecting a rom-com, but it's actually like quite serious and quite sad and has some pretty deep moments about mental health and recovering from trauma and allowing yourself to love and be loved. So yeah, maybe if you are looking for a cute, light-hearted summer romance, maybe don't read this one, but I personally really enjoyed it. I really like when characters in a rom-com or romance or whatever have stuff going on in their lives outside of the romance. It feels so much more realistic and a lot more kind of entertaining to read. So this one was definitely a win for me. Next up we have The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This is going in Who Is This Diva? This is a book about a woman who discovers that she has an infinite supply of husbands coming from her attic. And every time she sends a husband up to the attic to get something, he comes back an entirely new person, bringing with him an entirely different alternate universe in which the two of them ended up together. It is like such a perfect example of like 10 out of 10 concepts, 10 out of 10 execution. It was so much fun to read and yeah, super unique. Okay, we have our very first entry finally into our top tier, and it is, of course, Funny Story by Emily Henry. Up you go. There we go. Show me to be pleased, Rachel. I will just eat up anything Emily Henry writes, and this is no exception. I loved this book so much. I said when I first finished it that it was my favorite Emily Henry book so far, but then I read Happy Place and that just kind of pipped it to the post, which is why Happy Place is on my list of 24 books I read in 2024 and not Funny Story, but I still absolutely loved Funny Story so much, which is why it is on the top tier. I absolutely cannot wait for Emily Henry's next book coming out later this year. I'm so excited. Okay, next up we have Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna, and I mean, you wait half an hour for a bus and then two come along at once. This is another entry into Show Me to Me Please, Rachel. This was so good. It's about a collection of kind of interconnected people in London in June 2019, I believe. Over the course of a single weekend, there's a heatwave going on. There are a lot of different stories. Every single character is so well written, and like you end up rooting for them even though they're all flawed and make terrible decisions. Yeah, it's just, it was so good to read. I can't put it into words really. Like I was kind of tearing up at the end because I didn't really want to have to say goodbye to it. It was just that good. Oh, and you know what? Do you want another one?
Another one, thank you.
Let's give you another one. Let's put Hera up there as well. Hera by Jennifer Saint. This is Jennifer Saint's newest book and honestly her best book yet. This is a retelling of Greek mythology from the perspective of Hera, who is Zeus's wife. And there is just so much content packed into this book, and it is a wonder that she writes it so that it doesn't feel too rushed. Like there are occasionally a few kind of myths that are kind of glazed over and I would have liked them to be explored, but the pacing is always like, it's not too fast, not too slow. Yeah, it's like genuinely such an achievement even to have written this. Next up we have Hard Copy by Fionn Veldman. This is another book going in You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. I think this is another time when I was kind of expecting something from this book and I just didn't get it. I was expecting this book to be kind of lean more towards kind of the weird fiction end of the spectrum. It's about a woman who has kind of a slightly unnatural close relationship with her printer that is in her office at work. And I mean, based on that synopsis alone, you would maybe expect it to be kind of a bit of a weird fiction book. But it's not. It's more kind of it's just sad, really. It's quite a sad book because this woman obviously has quite a lot going on in her life and none of it is particularly good. She doesn't really have any friends, not even like in her workplace. She's kind of lonely, which is why she kind of turns to the companionship of the printer. And she also has kind of a dark past and some trauma related to that. Yeah, it's it's more of a sad book, so it's not quite what I was expecting. It's still well written. I still enjoyed it. But yeah, it wasn't really what I was expecting. Next up, we have Clean by Alia Tribuco Zaran. This is going in Who is this diva? This is a book that is translated from Spanish. It's set in Chile, and it is told from the point of view of the maid of a very wealthy household who have just lost their daughter, quite a young child who is pronounced dead at the start of the book. And the maid is locked in a room, and she speaks through the door and basically tells us what happened. Her kind of experience as the maid for the whole kind of 7 years that this girl was kind of growing up until her death. And it does have a very strong narrative voice. You get this whole kind of sense of like, this woman is speaking this whole time, and she is speaking to someone that she hopes is on the outside of this locked door and is listening, although she genuinely has no idea if anyone is listening. And it deals a lot with themes of wealth and race and class. There is a lot of kind of resentment and bitterness that this maid keeps to herself throughout this whole kind of time that she is in the household, that she's kind of finally letting out for the first time. Yeah, it was very well written, and I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I enjoyed it because it is quite harrowing at times, but I definitely appreciated it. Next, we have Orbital by Samantha Harvey, winner of the Booker Prize, and this is going in... If I can get it to go... There we go. I'm holding space for Orbital. I'm literally holding space for it because it's set in space. This is a book that follows 24 hours in the lives of the 6 inhabitants of the International Space Station as it orbits the Earth 16 times in those 24 hours. And it's basically like 6 extended character studies, really. There's a lot of exploration of those different characters and their responsibilities on the International Space Station and what is going on in their lives down on Earth. Yeah, it was very, very well written, well crafted, and it's a very small book. It's quite short, but it's also a very mighty book about the human condition, really. Next, we have Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle, and this is another one for holding space. I would never have kind of defined myself as a horror reader until I read this book, but I feel like this book has single-handedly gotten me into the horror genre. It was so fun to read, but also quite scary at times. It's about a showrunner in Hollywood who is kind of asked to kill off the main kind of queer couple in his TV show for like shock value, for money, essentially. And he doesn't want to do that, so he ends up kind of being chased down by the villains of his previous projects, which were all horror films, so it's all like kind of horror creatures and stuff. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to read, but also quite tense at times. There were definitely kind of characters and monsters and stuff in the book that I was quite scared of, and I also really enjoyed kind of the main trio of characters. There's some really good queer representation in there, and despite the name, there is no Bury Your Gaze actually in the book, rest assured. Next up, we have In Any Lifetime by Mark Guggenheim. This is going to go in holding space. I'm holding space for this one. It's a sci-fi book featuring alternate universes, and it's basically like if Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was actually good. I do have a pretty long review of it in my previous video about my 24 best books of 2024. But yeah, long story short, I did really enjoy it. Next, we have The Wedding People by Alison Espach. This is going in Who is this diva? This is a book about a woman who is divorced, and she checks into a hotel with the sole purpose of unaliving herself, but she accidentally ends up crashing a wedding, like this massive $1 million wedding. And yeah, she makes friends, she makes enemies, chaos ensues, and yeah, I feel like she just has this massive journey, this main character, over the course of the book that was really well written, well done. She kind of rediscovers her love for life and her will to live. It was a really, really good read, and I really enjoyed it. Next, we have Dark Restraint by Katie Robert. This is the book after Midnight Ruin in the Dark Olympus series, so the book 7, I think. I read this fairly recently, actually, but it is unfortunately another entry into Oh That's Not. Yeah, this is, I think, the most dark romance book in the entire series. Even though the entire series is meant to be dark romance, this is definitely the most dark romance in the whole thing. It's a romance between Ariadne and the Minotaur, which in itself, as soon as I found out that that was going to be the relationship in this book, I was like, because like in the actual mythology, those two characters are half siblings. I mean, they're adopted siblings in this book, which, I mean, isn't much better. And also there's a lot of like stalking and committing murder as a love language, which again, not really my thing. Yeah, the actual like romance side of the book, I really did not enjoy it. It gave me the ick a lot of the time. But again, I enjoyed the plot side of things. As I said with Midnight Ruin, like the plot is very much progressing throughout the whole kind of series, and I enjoyed that. If there had been no romance in this book whatsoever, I would have really enjoyed it. But yeah, the romance itself, and because this is a romance book, like it is very much kind of in the genre of romance, yeah, it's kind of a big part of it. And I did not enjoy it at all. Next we have In Our Likeness by Brian Van Dyke. This is our very first entry into Mid. Yeah, this is another science fiction book that is about artificial intelligence. I'm pretty sure this is how much of an impression this book left on me. I think it's about someone who creates an artificial intelligence and it kind of gets out of control, and there's like an evil startup CEO or something who is trying to control the AI. I don't know. All I really remember is that like I could just tell that this book was written by a man, just in the way that he wrote the one singular female character in the book. Yeah, that's it really. Next we have The End Crowns All by B. Fitzgerald. You guys already know where this is gonna go. Up we go. Even further up. There we go. Show me to me please, Rachel. I love this book so much. It's a sapphic reimagining of the Trojan War, starring Helen and Cassandra as love interests, which is like, on paper, that is my exact kind of book. I love both those characters. I love Trojan War retellings. Yeah. 10 out of 10 concept, 10 out of 10 execution, 11 out of 10 execution. I loved this book so much, and B. Fitzgerald is a new favorite author of mine. I hadn't read a single B. Fitzgerald book up until this year, and now I've read all 3 of her books that are out, and yeah, they're all phenomenal. In fact, let's do another one. We have Then Things Went Dark, which is B. Fitzgerald's debut thriller. She's written, as of right now, 2 myth retellings and 1 thriller. This is her debut, and it is essentially a study in terrible people. And it's like Love Island, essentially, as a setting, but several awful characters who all do pretty terrible things, and there's a murder mystery and all that. So yeah, it's going in holding space because I didn't enjoy it quite as much as her myth retellings, but I will eat up anything B. Fitzgerald writes. I think, yeah, she's such a good author. Next up we have The Last Gifts of the Universe by Riley August. This is also going all the way to the top There we go. I love this book so much. It's like a book for like people who love Becky Chambers but have read all of her back catalogue. I'm slowly getting through all of Becky Chambers' back catalogue. And yeah, this was such a good book. It's about two siblings and their pet cat who travel through the universe to try and find out information about this terrifying existential threat that could wipe humanity off the face of the universe. I was gonna say the Earth, but like we're past that right now. We're talking about like deep space. And yeah, this is a story just about love in all its forms. It had me ugly sobbing about dead aliens at 1 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, it's quite a short book. It didn't take me very long to read. It took me 2 or 3 sittings. But it packs so much of a punch. Like, if you look at the cover, you'd think it would be like kind of a cozy sci-fi spacey book, but there are like actually kind of harrowing elements to it as well. Yeah, it's scary in parts and sad as well. But yeah, it's so good. So good. Next we have When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson. This is going to Holding Space. We are holding space, always, for Jandy Nelson. I love I'll Give You the Sun so much. It's one of my favourite books ever. And as a result, this was one of my most anticipated books of the year. And it lived up to the hype. It's kind of magical realism set in Wine County, California, with a family curse, and kind of multi-generational family drama. And it would be on the top tier if I hadn't got halfway through the book and had to play the least fun game of siblings or dating I have ever played. Even less fun than Dark Restraint, actually. That was my one complaint about the book. Next up we have Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. This is another book for Who Is This Diva? This is a novella that takes place over the course of a single night. And yeah, there's a mystery that a group of nocturnal people have to solve. And it is eerie and atmospheric and pretty gross as well. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It didn't quite pack the same punch as If We Were Villains, but it was still fun to read, and I read it over the course of a single day. It was very quick, and yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. Next we have Let's Split Up by Bill Wood. You Were Good. I'm waiting for you to be great. This is a young adult murder mystery, I think with supernatural elements, although I can't really remember. It didn't really leave that much of an impression upon me. Maybe if I was younger and I read it as a teenager, I would have enjoyed it more, because, you know, it's not really meant for... It's not really written for my kind of demographic. So maybe again it's a me problem. But yeah, it was good. It just didn't really leave that much of an impression upon me. Next up we have, we're getting into the Christmas books now. We're getting towards the end of the year, guys. Not that much longer left. We have Look Up Handsome by Jack Strange. This is another one for You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. It was very Hallmarky. It's a rom-com set in Hay-on-Wye, the book town in the UK, and it was cute. I did enjoy it, but I did feel like it was a little bit surface level. I mean, it's meant to be kind of Hallmark inspired, which I guess is why it was kind of surface level. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, but I didn't think it was like amazing. Okay, next up we have The Nightmare Before Christmas by Sarah Rush. This is going in Who Is This Diva? I wasn't expecting to enjoy this as much as I did. And I've seen like a lot of kind of mixed opinions about this book, depending on what people wanted from it. Because I was kind of going into it expecting like a kind of a cute little light-hearted Christmas rom-com, and this was like I read this during my reading Christmas books video, so I was like, by this point I was getting a little bit sick of just a lot of rom-coms. And it turned out to not really be that. What it is basically kind of a more of a fantasy book with a romance subplot. But it's more about kind of fantasy with a really cool magic system, and it talks about like themes of anti-colonialism and anti-capitalism, and yeah, there's a lot of like politics involved. It's a lot more deep than kind of your standard Hallmark romance, basically. And so I think that is probably why people who were expecting a cute little Hallmark romance were disappointed by it. But for me, I found it really refreshing, actually, that it wasn't just kind of a cute little rom-com. So yeah, that one was definitely a pleasant surprise. Next up, we have Make My Wish Come True by Rachel Lippincott and Alison Derrick. This is going up to Holding Space. Yeah, this was my favorite Christmas rom-com that I read this year. It's a cute little YA holiday romance about a teen Hollywood star and her former best friend, who she left behind to go to Hollywood, and it's kind of a cute little small town fake dating romance. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Okay, next we have Remember Me Tomorrow by Farah Heron. This is You Are Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. It is very similar plot-wise to Where Sleeping Girls Lie. It's another kind of dark academia-esque mystery, but this one also has kind of a magical realism time travel element to it, where the main girl can message the main guy like 5 weeks into the past or something before he goes missing, and she's trying to like solve the mystery and stuff. So yeah, similar to Where Sleeping Girls Lie, I just felt like it handles some of the themes of the book and dark academia in general with a lot less nuance than Where Sleeping Girls Lie. It was quite heavy-handed with those kind of discussions. Next we have A History of Britain in 10 Enemies by Terry Deary. This is the only non-fiction book that is on the list. I think I only read like 3 non-fiction books this year, and this is one of them. This is going to Who Is This Diva? This book is basically Horrible Histories for adults. I think anyone who has read or watched Horrible Histories as a kid will really enjoy it. You know, it reads like a Horrible Histories book. It's very kind of fun and conversational and funny at times, but it's also more mature, I guess. It deals with like more kind of things that you wouldn't really expect a child to understand, like colonialism, for example. Like it talks about all of the really awful things that Britain and several other empires have done in history. So yeah, it's basically Horrible Histories for adults, and as a Horrible Histories fan, I really enjoyed it. Next up we have Eat, Slay, Love by Julie May Cohen. I love the title. It's very fun. This was my very first review copy that I got. So yeah, that's fun, cute little milestone there. It's another one of those kind of girl boss crime committing books. Yeah, like it's a revenge thriller basically. And it's like 3 women who will realize they've been played by the same guy, decide to get revenge. It's very kind of The Other Woman, if you've seen that film. It's a good film. But also murder is involved. And yeah, it's very similar to like How to Kill a Guy in 10 Ways in that it is very formulaic of the subgenre. It's still, you know, it's fun. I enjoyed reading it. But yeah, it didn't really stand out that much to me. Now for a book that definitely did stand out. She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark. Her new short story collection. This is going even further up than this. We are putting it in holding space. We are always holding space for Eliza Clark. This was my favorite short story collection that I read this year, and also my favorite Eliza Clark book that I've read so far. Next up, we have Adelaide by Genevieve Wheeler. This is following She's Always Hungry all the way up to Holding Space. This is your classic sad girl book. The main girl, Adelaide, she is sad. Yeah, she's got a bit of a toxic relationship situation going on. And yeah, I just thought there was a lot that resonated in the book. It was very sad. It deals a lot with the theme of grief. I mean, all of the kind of the main characters in the book do go through quite severe grief and deal with it in very different ways. And yeah, it was sad, but it's also very, very well written and written with a lot of empathy and a lot of love. Okay, now we have the Under the Mistletoe collection, which was the collection that I started off my Christmas books video with. It's all a collection of 5 short stories, so we're going to be quite quick fire with this. Starting off with Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. This is bottom tier. It was a disappointment, especially considering the fact that I have enjoyed the other Ali Hazelwood books that I've read. But yeah, it was very much a giant man meets tiny woman kind of book. And yeah, it was a little bit cringe. The main guy gave me the ick. Then we have Merry Ever After by Tessa Bailey. Again, this is bottom tier. This is an even bigger culprit of the giant man meets tiny woman trope. It's just it was so cringe, and the guy's height was mentioned so many times. Literally every other sentence was like, oh, he's so big and so well endowed. Yeah, cringe. All by My Elf by Olivia Dade. This is gonna go. Yeah, so I'm gonna go and Hear Me Out Cake. This was my favorite story in the collection. It was fun. I enjoyed how unapologetically silly it was. It did not take itself seriously at all. Then Merriment and Mayhem by Alexandria Belfleur. Again, this is going in Hear Me Out Cake. This was just, it was like a Hallmark film, basically, in the sense that, like, it was completely ridiculous and kind of cringe at times, but I also had a lot of fun while reading it. And then finally, Only Santa's in the Building by Alexis Daria. This is mid. Yeah, it was just mid. It was incredibly cringy, like especially like the spicy scenes. There are only so many holiday themed innuendos I can handle, and that is maybe one, but even then you are on thin ice. The Substitute by David McElroy. This is going in You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. I got an arc of this from the author to review, and I'm very grateful for that. But it did feel very much like the author tried to cram in as many classic horror scenes as physically possible in this book, which is great if you're like a classic horror fan. But at times it felt a little bit unnecessary. But it was still like a fun story. It's a story about a woman who is a teacher, and she is off with the flu for a week, and then she comes back and no one remembers that she exists. She's been replaced by an entirely new teacher altogether, and there's a whole mystery behind it. It's very kind of eldritch horrors, that kind of stuff. It was fun. It was entertaining. But yeah, it was good. It wasn't great though. I wouldn't say it was great. Then we have The Answer Is No, a short story by Frederick Backman. Again, this is going on You Were Good, I'm Waiting for You to Be Great. Again, it was fun. It was entertaining. It's about a guy who is very antisocial. He doesn't want to open the door to anyone, but he kind of accidentally finds himself at the center of a big plot in his apartment complex. Yeah, it was fun. It was kind of heartwarming, and I really like the dialogue. I'm definitely going to read more Frederick Backman in the future. But because it's a short story, I didn't really get an awful lot from it. I don't think it's really going to stay in my head for a long time. So yeah. We're down to our last two now. First we have The Christmas Book Hunt by Jenny Colgan. This is going in mid. Again, it's a short story, so it didn't really leave a lasting impression. Yeah, it was cute. It's about a woman who goes on like a cross-country hunt for a very, very rare edition of a book. And yeah, it was cute and it was entertaining. But it was pretty surface level. Yeah, that's it really. And then finally we have Something Extraordinary by Alexis Hall. This is the third book in the Something Something series, which is a series of queer Regency romances. And this is gonna go in, it's going up here. There we go. Who is this diva? I love this series so much. It is so silly. It doesn't really take itself very seriously. There are some really funny scenes in there. The dialogue is always really fun. The way in which it's written is really fun to read and listen to, because sometimes I listen to like the audiobooks as well. Even like the spicy scenes aren't particularly cringy, which is saying something for me. I'm not really very much of a spice reader, if you couldn't already tell from this tier list. And this book also does a really fantastic job of taking two characters who, when I read the previous installments in the series, I found very annoying. And they are the central characters in this book. And I actually found them super endearing and sympathetic in this one, which is quite an achievement, actually. So yeah, it was a really good addition to the series, and yeah, the whole series is definitely worth reading, especially if you're like a fan of Bridgerton but you think Bridgerton could be gayer. Yeah, it's definitely worth reading. There we go, that is the full tier list. Yeah. Only took like an hour and a half. That was fun. I had fun doing that. I'm yeah, it's definitely going to be something that I repeat next year, although probably with a slightly smaller amount of books. I say that now, but it may well be another 50 books next year. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more content. You can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Storygraph. My username on all those platforms is @WithLivJones. If you want even more content that is slightly more often than on YouTube, which is just long form, very long form actually, content every couple of weeks, every couple of months even. I'm not going to be that generous with myself. I have lots planned for the upcoming year, so please stay tuned and subscribe if you want to see what comes out next. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!